In February 1821, a painting went on display in London that was so overwhelming the gallery had to install a metal railing to hold back the crowd. More than 5,000 people paid money to see it. They queued in the streets. The painting was called Belshazzar's Feast. The man who made it was a former China plate painter from a one-room cottage in Northumberland. His name was John Martin, and this was the painting that turned him into the most popular artist in England. In this video, you'll learn everything about this fascinating work of art. By the end, you'll understand why this painting launched a career and the peculiar reason it vanished from public view. John Martin was born in 1789 in Hayden Bridge, a village near Hexham. His father was a fencing master who had a relatively hard life. He had 3 brothers, and every one of them led an extraordinary life. One became a soldier who fought at Waterloo. One was an inventor obsessed with perpetual motion. And one, Jonathan, was a preacher who went mad and set fire to York Minster in 1829. He was committed to Bedlam. The painter got nicknamed Mad Martin because, for some reason, people kept confusing him with his brother. Martin was apprenticed at 14 to a coach builder to learn heraldic painting. When a wage dispute ended that, he was placed with an Italian artist named Boniface Musso. In 1806, he followed Musso to London. He was only 17 at the time. He married at 19 and scraped by painting china and glass at a factory on the Strand. During the daytime, he decorated plates. By night, he studied perspective until 3 in the morning. In 1811, the Royal Academy finally accepted one of his paintings, a landscape, but nothing came of it. The following year, he painted a work titled Sadak in Search of the Waters of Oblivion. It's a volcanic scene of a tiny man clinging to a cliff in a landscape of impossible scale. A former governor of the Bank of England bought it for 50 guineas. That was his first real break. Something clicked for Martin, but it was not his major breakthrough. That would take almost another decade. Between Sadak and Belshazzar's Feast, Martin lost his father, his mother, his grandmother, and a young son, all in a single year. He kept painting because he really had no other option. In 1816, he painted Joshua commanding the sun to stand still upon Gibeon. It broke every rule of conventional composition, and the public loved it. Martin was finding his voice, enormous biblical scenes with tiny figures dwarfed by architecture and sky. The human being was painted almost insignificant against the vast landscapes that featured a mysterious blend of creation and destruction. Nobody else was painting like this. Then, around 1818, he met an American painter named Washington Allston. Allston was working on his own Belshazzar's Feast. It was a painting he worked on for 26 years, and he remarkably never finished it. The two artists talked, and this was another pivotal moment in the career of John Martin. He had already painted the fall of Babylon in 1819. Now he would paint the feast that preceded the fall. The story comes from the book of Daniel, chapter 5. Belshazzar, king of Babylon, holds a great feast for 1,000 of his lords. He commanded that the sacred gold and silverware, looted from the temple in Jerusalem, be brought out so his guests could drink wine from them. This was deliberate desecration. Belshazzar is not just celebrating, but rather taunting the God of the Israelites. And then, mid-feast, a disembodied hand appears and writes 4 words on the wall: Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. Nobody can read them. The wise men don't understand. And finally, the prophet Daniel is summoned. He told them, God has numbered the days of your kingdom. Your empire will be given to the Medes and the Persians. And according to the story, that night, Belshazzar is killed and Babylon falls. If you have ever heard the term "the writing is on the wall," this is the story it originated from. And Martin saw in it something no painter before him had fully realized: the scale of what was being judged. Let's take an even closer look at what he painted. The canvas is enormous. The original version is nearly 2.5 meters wide, or about 98 inches. The scene is set inside a colossal open-air banqueting hall that features massive columns rising on both sides. These are decorated with signs of the zodiac. The architecture blends Egyptian, Babylonian, and Indian styles. Martin had never been to any of these places, but he studied every engraving and travel account he could find. The hall opens to the sky. Beyond the columns, you can see the hanging gardens of Babylon. Further back, the immense Tower of Babel, accompanied by a temple-like structure referred to as a ziggurat. Martin stacked the entire mythology of Babylon into a single background. The foreground swarms with hundreds, perhaps thousands of tiny figures. What's fascinating is that they're all caught mid-panic. That's because the writing is already on the wall as the inscription glows on the wall on the left. In the center foreground stands Daniel. He's the man wearing a dark coat. He seems to be the only still figure in a sea of chaos. He had just told the most powerful man on earth that his kingdom was over. The composition is outstanding as our eyes are pulled in three ways simultaneously. Left toward the inscription, right toward the king, and backward through layer after layer of architecture that is illuminated by a moonlit sky. Nobody had painted on a scale like this before in England. To give some reference on the time frame, this painting was completed a year after Théodore Géricault completed his monumental Raft of the Medusa in France. But here's what made Martin's painting revolutionary. He did not paint just people, but an entire civilization. In Rembrandt's famous Belshazzar's feast, you see faces. It's intimate, as you can see the individual terror and the shock in the king's eyes. Martin's version is the opposite, as you can barely see the faces of the people. The judgment is not against a man, but against an entire empire. The scale of what the hand was condemning is what made the English crowd so enthusiastic about this work. When it was exhibited at the British Institution in 1821, it won the top prize, £200 for the best painting at the exhibition. That was real money for a man who had spent years decorating china plates. Thomas Lawrence, president of the Royal Academy, called Martin the most popular painter of his day. Mezzotint engraving spread the image across Europe. People who would never enter a London gallery could own a print for a fraction of the cost. Martin's apocalyptic style became so recognizable that it got its own word, Martinesque. But the art establishment was not universally kind. John Ruskin praised Martin's imagination while savaging his technique. He felt that Martin focused too much on the spectacle, not enough on the truth. The thing is, Martin knew exactly what he was doing. He was not trying to paint reality. How could he when he painted a story in which God himself decided it was over, right? The public understood this, even when the critics didn't. Belshazzar's Feast was the second painting in a trilogy. The fall of Babylon came first in 1819. The fall of Nineveh followed in 1828. All three dealt with the same theme: empires that believed they were eternal and the forces that brought them to ruin. It resonated powerfully in Regency England. The British Empire was expanding and heavy industry was transforming the landscape. And here was a painter reminding people that every empire falls. When essayist Charles Lamb noted that Martin's feast looked remarkably like the banquets thrown by George IV at Brighton Pavilion, John Martin was rather hesitant to confirm the satire. His career took off, but as it progressed, the establishment started seeing Martin as a showman, not a serious artist. He produced one last great trilogy before his death in 1854, The Plains of Heaven, The Great Day of His Wrath, and The Last Judgment. After his death, his reputation faded almost entirely. For nearly a century, John Martin was forgotten. Only in the 20th century did his reputation recover when movie producers became inspired by his work. Finally, in 2011, Tate Britain organized a major retrospective. The crowds came again, just as they had in 1821. I want to end this video with a remarkable anecdote about Martin's Belshazzar's Feast. In 1848, a Liverpool merchant named John Naylor bought the painting. In 1854, while it was being transported to Naylor's gallery, the cart carrying it was hit by a train. A painting about divine judgment, struck by the most powerful symbol of industrial progress. Martin, who died that same year, might have appreciated the irony. After Naylor's ownership, the painting was offered to the National Gallery in London. The National Gallery said no. The reason? It was too large. There is something almost biblical about that rejection. A painting about the failure to read the writing on the wall was rejected by an institution that failed to read the significance of what was right in front of it. Belshazzar's Feast ended up in a private collection, and it remains there to this day. But don't worry, You can still find a half-sized sketch Martin made around 1820, hanging at the Yale Center for British Art. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.